Ah, retro games. How I love retro games. I love the noise they make when you clang them together. And the smell. 80s. But most of all, I love to toss them up and let them hit me on the head. Oof. DuckTales. Released in 1990 on the Nintendo Entertainment System by Capcom. Let's rewrite history and pop it in.
Well, here we are, episode 50, and what a game to celebrate. So we have 3 difficulty settings here, and although difficult is the toughest, this is no Ninja Gaiden, so don't stress. We're going to go normal today, even though I'm anything but.
Every day they're out there making DuckTales, woo! Don't mind me, I'm just reliving my childhood in 8-bit.
So we're greeted with a Mega Man-esque stage selection screen on Scrooge's supercomputer, meaning that we can play stages in any order, and it doesn't make a difference which you pick. Barring one example, which will come a bit later. Every level shows the 5 lost legendary treasures that you will receive for defeating every boss. Now, let's swing into the Amazon. Bless me bagpipes! Will that thrill-seeker Scrooge McDuck ever quit? Uncle Scrooge has taken on the challenge to discover the 5 lost legendary treasures of the world, and along for the adventure is his pilot Launchpad McQuack, his faithful nephews Huey, Dewey and Louie, and a few other familiar faces. Swing through the Amazon jungle, brave past the Transylvanian castle, head deep into the African mines, keep your cool on the snowy Himalayas, and finally, shoot for the stars and land on the moon. Time to set off for yet another fantastic adventure full of... DuckTales is a side-scrolling platform game in which you must collect as much money as possible. Hang on, have we already played this game? Your weapon of choice is Scrooge's trusty cane, which he uses as a pogo stick, and that can jump up on enemies. Also, he can use a golf swing into objects and chests.
Swinging a hit!
Speaking of chests, as well as enemies and secrets, there are lots of them in this game. For instance, here in this cave, you can actually walk up along the status bar, much like another famous platform game you may have heard of. Not only that, but if you're adventurous enough like I was as a kid, you'll find you can do it again! This game is full of secret areas and rewards like that. There are many items to collect that reside in the chests, and sometimes just in mid-air, reminiscent of Wonder Boy 2. Jumping up and down randomly will often reveal items, mostly diamonds, but also other things, such as ice cream, which will restore 1 HP, cake, which will fully restore you, a money coin, which is this game's Starman, and it makes Scrooge invincible for a short period of time, a Scrooge doll, which is a 1-up item, and finally, a very useful and very well hidden permanent upgrade to your health. 2 of these exist in the game.
Always plan a smooth landing.
So, in every stage, Launchpad McQuack will greet you, and he acts as a checkpoint. When you talk to him, you'll get the option to go back to Duckburg or continue on. If you go back to Duckburg, Launchpad will fly across the screen and you'll end up back at the stage select computer screen. Something that happened very rarely for me as a kid. So rare, in fact, I honestly thought I imagined it. But it turns out it's real, and there is a way to activate it. During the cutscene of Launchpad taking you across the screen, if you happen to have the 5th digit from the right of your money total be a 7, then instead of flying completely across the screen, you will actually drop down in the middle and enter a kind of coin heaven, similar to Super Mario Bros. 3. The screen will scroll across, and Gyro Gear Loose will throw out diamonds for you to collect. At the end, Launchpad McQuack will take you back to Duckburg. In the same way there are secret areas for items, there are also secret shortcuts to bosses. Here, for instance, instead of continuing right, you can pogo up on this invisible chest, climb up this invisible vine, and drop down into this invisible mirror. But if you want to go the intended way, you are supposed to pay homage to a duck god in the form of $300,000.
Bless me bagpipes.
Pay up, and a moving platform will appear. So, if you come here, you can wait for an enemy to appear, and you can jump off him and just catch the vine at the top of the screen. That way, you can talk to one of your nephews, continue left, and make your way to the boss. Every boss essentially has the same pattern. Avoid attacks, and jump on them when they're vulnerable. It takes about 5 hits for each boss. Once defeated, they will drop one of the 5 lost legendary treasures. And after that, it's back to Duckburg for the next adventure.
This must be worth a small fortune.
Okay, Transylvania. Now, take a good look at this place, because we'll be seeing quite a bit of it compared to the other levels. You'll see what I'm talking about soon. Now, when it comes to visuals and music, this game hits it out of the park on both accounts. Visually, the game is beautiful, with its bright colours, lively sprites, and engaging backgrounds. The game does an excellent job of spritifying many of the beloved DuckTales cast, and some of the bosses look fantastic and instantly recognisable from the show. A few funny little things though, is the colours of some characters are not congruent with the show. I don't believe this is an actual error, but this is likely due to the fact that the game can be taking some inspiration from the original comic books. That item that was in the chest just there, by the way, was the life extender. And as I mentioned, there's 2 of these in the game, and they are very hidden. Now, as for music, curse me kilts, it's incredible. From the rockin' 8-bit main theme to every single level track. The music is catchy, memorable, layered, and it fits the areas that it plays in perfectly. One track in particular is often considered one of the greatest pieces of music to come from the NES. We'll be hearing it soon enough, don't worry. So this boss battle's a little bit different with Magica. You have to avoid the lightning that comes out, and you have to wait until she is low enough to strike. Once you've clipped her wings, it's time to head deep into the African mines.
I've never seen a gem like this before.
But first, a little detour.
Hang on. Have I never noticed this before? Huey, Louie, and Louie?
Something I haven't mentioned yet, but can definitely come in handy, is that you can actually restore your HP by pressing select. The only catch is, it costs $3 million, so use it sparingly.
Curse me kilts, we just did this. I don't want to do this again.
Fortunately, you don't have to do the entire level again. In fact, you don't have to travel that far at all. Just jump in this mirror, and there's your key.
No point in hanging around here.
DuckTales is very near and dear to my heart. The series, the game, the characters, Scrooge especially, were all building blocks of my childhood. Now, DuckTales was the very first video game I ever received, along with Super Mario Bros. With my NES console. That was given to me by my loving pa for my 6th birthday. Here is one of those hidden treasures. There's 2 of these in the game. They're worth a lot of money. Unlike most kids, I'm guessing, who popped in Super Mario Bros. As their first game, as a die-hard fan, even at that age of DuckTales, there was no doubt in my mind that would be the first game I put in. As mentioned in my Alex Kidd episode, I had played video games beforehand, mostly at my grandma's and at my cousin's, but I never actually owned any, or a console for that matter, until that fateful birthday. Now that he's rolling 6 feet under, it's time to head to the next level, the Himalayas.
It's a diamond the size of Mrs. Meekley.
To me, The best thing about going to primary school was coming home around 3:30, 4, and plonking straight in front of the television to watch the Disney afternoon block. I think it was on Channel 7 here in Australia. This block usually contained around 3 Disney cartoons back to back. And to be honest, the entire lineup was incredible. You had The Adventures of Gummy Bears, Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers, Darkwing Duck, Tailspin, Goof Troop, and many more. Now, these were absolute staples for me. But DuckTales always stood head and shoulders above the rest, with the incredible adventurous globe-trotting feel it had, the amazing background music. Even at that age, I was able to notice how impressive it was. And of course, the greatest fictional character in media, Scrooge McDuck, who's been described as a cross between John D. Rockefeller and Indiana Jones. Always up for adventure, never down to spend a dime. And I highly doubt the logo text is just a coincidence. Circling back to the Disney afternoon for a brief moment, there was actually a modern console release called the Disney Afternoon Collection, and it features all the Capcom NES Disney games, along with a couple of extra features, like a museum mode. It's only digital, unfortunately, and this is something I would love to have a physical copy of. But regardless, it's still a fantastic package. So even now, in 2025, I really feel the OG DuckTales from the 80s holds up really well, full of humorous, heartfelt, and even heavy moments. Heavy for a kids show anyway. For an example, the Golden Goose two-parter was especially traumatizingly fascinating. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, at the end of part 1, the nephews were imprisoned as gold statues. And then, it hit me. To be continued. I always found To Be Continued so epic as a kid. Anyway, I was anxious to see what was going to happen in part 2, but it turns out I had a school engagement and I could not miss it. So, I missed the episode, and I cried and I whinged. Remember, I was a kid. I never found out what happened. And this was long before DVR and streaming and all that. And I was probably too young to know how to tape VHS tapes as well. When I finally saw the episode, a year or two later, it exceeded my imagination.
This is a wee bit slippery.
As at one point, 99% of the world turns to solid gold. So essentially, every person on Duck Earth dies. Briefly. Okay, here we are, the infamous moon level. Seriously, some of the best music on the NES. If you ever get a chance to watch any of the OG series, which is on Disney+, I highly recommend checking out The Golden Goose. It feels like a movie. And speaking of, believe it or not, the very first movie I saw in the cinema was Treasure of the Lost Lamp. I have to give a quick shout out to the very first 5 episodes, which is essentially a movie called Treasure of the Golden Suns. Now, I would rent this VHS tape from the local video store at my grandma's almost every time I went there. It had all the episodes compiled into a movie. And owning a copy of this VHS is my white whale. I have never seen it again, and I've been looking for decades at this point. If anybody knows anything about what I'm talking about, please let me know in the comments. Treasure of the Golden Suns is just as good as Golden Goose, if not slightly better. So, if you happen to check out any DuckTales, I highly recommend those episodes. So it's no wonder I'm mildly obsessed with it all these years later.
Nearly lost my hat on that one.
Just want to talk about the reboot real quick, the 2017 reboot.
Do you mind?
I think it's a fantastic update that is very conscious of the love that everyone has for the original.
Thank you kindly.
It's modernised, of course, but not so much that it's unrecognisable. And of course, I cannot fail to mention that one of the episodes literally has the moon track in it. There's a ton of nods and homages and Easter eggs in this series, and with talent such as David Tennant, Ben Schwartz, and Lin-Manuel Miranda, to name a few, it's certainly worth a watch if you loved the original. Now, nothing will replace the love I have for the original, but I definitely recommend checking out the reboot if you get a chance. Now, I'm sure you're also aware that there was a remake of this game called DuckTales Remastered. Now, I'm not going to talk about this because I'm actually looking to do a playthrough sometime soon. So, subscribe if you don't want to miss that. Well, the one thing I will say is that it's essentially like a brand new DuckTales episode. You know, decades later. Almost every voice actor reprises their role, and there's many new lines of dialogue. Every scene is fully voice acted. It's an absolute treat and a love letter to fans of the original such as myself. Also, it was the last DuckTales media that Alan Young ever did, who played the voice of Scrooge, unfortunately. He was best known, apart from Scrooge, as Wilbur on Mr. Ed. He's dearly missed.
Oh, not the Beagle Boys again.
Now, before I forget, there's a DuckTales 2, also released on the NES. It's a fair bit different, but it's well worth a play. The only thing is, if you want it physical, you're looking in the low hundreds for a cart, and in about the mid-hundreds if you want it complete.
Ah, it's barely the size of Launchpad's brain.
It's also included in the aforementioned Afternoon Collection, so unless you're Scrooge McDuck, that's your best bet. Well, that's all levels done, all treasures recovered, so we win. Well, not quite. Blast that glum gold. Well, I guess it's back to Transylvania. Again.
Third time's a charm, right?
Now, we are pretty familiar with the layout here, so no lollygagging. Let's head straight to the boss this time. Turns out it's...
Count Duckula!
well, not quite, but pretty close. It's the lazily named Dracula Duck. I mean, we are in a castle in Transylvania. One could call it a Castlevania, eh? Ugh. Regardless, once you send him packing, it's time for the true final boss.
Ha ha! This old duck still got it.
Flintheart Glumgold, being carried by Magica in her bird form. Now this sequence absolutely reminds me of the scene in the opening. Awesome stuff. Once you reach the top, jump down onto the chest, and you have completed DuckTales. Woo! Now there are 3 possible endings to attain here. Ending 1 is the normal ending that you will likely see on your first run. Ending 2 is the special ending that you are only going to see if you attain $10 million or more. So you'll need many red diamonds and both hidden treasures. And finally, by far the most difficult, is the bad ending, ending 3, in which you must finish the game with $0. This is much harder than it sounds. There are many guides on how to pull this off, so if you're up for this particular challenge, go seek them out. We got the normal ending here, so there's work to be done. And now, finally, we've come to pricing. We're looking at a loose cart here, probably about $40, and if you want complete, which I have, it's about $100. I think I paid $70 for mine, and this is going back at least a decade. And so, that was our 50th episode special, DuckTales. And what a game to celebrate the milestone. I still hum the music
from every level to this day, and I have the maps and the secrets and the nooks and crannies pretty much memorized. There's not many games I can say that about. Now, DuckTales as a property is very dear to me, and when it comes to the NES game, it's easily in my top 5 games of all time. So what I would say to those who have never played the game before or never grew up with it, it's one of the more accessible NES games when it comes to difficulty. It's fairly pick up and play because you have the level select option, start anywhere and just learn it, and it's got a relatively short runtime too, so with all of that, yeah, it's one of the easier ones to get into. Now, as mentioned, I will be doing a playthrough of the remaster sometime pretty soon, so stay tuned for that. Now, in retrospect, life is like a hurricane. It's a duck blow. Might solve a mystery, or rewrite history. And that was DuckTales. Thank you for celebrating my 50th episode with me. See you later.